Okay, so good evening everybody. As we said, my name is Olivia. I work on what's called the Schools and Colleges Liaison Team at the university. So I travel all over the country going into schools, colleges, talking to students of all ages, parents and carers, teachers and advisors about kind of all stages of the application process. So kind of helping people figure out whether university is for them in the first place and then helping them through that application process. So things like personal statements, the UCAS application and student finance as well. So in the next kind of half an hour or so, I'm going to tell you now this is going to be information overload. It's going to be a lot of information in quite a short amount of time. But as we said, we're going to share the slides with you afterwards. If you want to learn more about the University of Northampton, you can scan that QR code and fill out a form. If you want to come along to an open day, I will always be there to answer a million questions. And I will hang around at the end if you've got any questions as well. So in the next kind of half an hour, I'm going to whiz through kind of a bit more about, so for you, those of you in year 12 kind of thinking about where to start. If you really have no idea where to start with university research, you think, oh my God, there's so many universities, there's so many courses, so we're going to think about kind of where you can start at this point. A bit more about the UCAS application itself, and I do also as well like to whiz through a bit of information about student finance at this stage, because I think for a lot of people, deciding whether university is for them in the first place can also be the financial implications of maybe consideration there too. So I do like to go through a bit of information about finance as well. So, where do we start with thinking about university? So generally, the process for most students is firstly choosing a course, then choosing a university. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but that's generally the way that most students go about thinking about university. So at the minute, there are over 30,000 different courses you can choose from in the UK. So that's quite a big number, so that's why we talk about research so much, helping you narrow down those choices. And there are over 100 universities in the UK to choose from as well. So you've got a lot of options, which is good news. But it's how do we think about narrowing down those choices? So students have got a few different options when it comes to qualifications. Generally, most students come into university to do a bachelor's degree, so BA/BSc. But within that, we've got a few different options. So most students tend to do what we call a single honours, which is when you study one subject on its own. So super in-depth, that's usually for 3 years. We also have within the bachelor's degree another option as well, which is called a joint honours, which is when students study 2 subjects side by side, but 50-50. So they're not doing 2 degrees, they're not doing twice as much work, they're still just paying one set of tuition fees importantly, but they're studying kind of the best halves of 2 subjects. And this might be because students can't decide between 2 subjects, or they're going to choose 2 subjects that go quite well together and they make sense for that student's chosen career, is the idea of those joint honours. Not every university offers joint honours, so we don't really do them at the University of Northampton, but that's why that 30,000 is such a high number, mainly because of different combinations of joint honours that students can study. A very popular option in the UK now is what we call sandwich courses, so nothing to do with like subways, but it's basically when students do 2 years of university, they take a year out, usually to do a paid internship, sometimes it means studying abroad as well, but 2 years at uni, a year out of university to do a paid internship, and then they come back to university for a year to finish their degree, so that it's sandwiched in the middle of their degree. So that's a really popular option for a lot of students, and most universities are offering a huge number of sandwich courses. At Northampton, near enough all of our courses have got work placements in one way or another attached to them. When it comes to thinking about what subjects that you want to study at university, this sounds so cheesy, but we tend to say start with your dream job and work your way backwards. So think about young people in terms of, where do you see yourself career-wise in 5, 10, 15 years? Is it a specific job role? Is it a specific sector? Is it just something you had ideas about at the moment? But it can be a great place to start. Kind of work your way backwards. Do you need to go to university? What do you need to study? What sort of qualifications are available? If you genuinely have no idea about what to do, that's quite a nice place to start. We also want students to generally consider subjects that they are interested in, that they are good at. So thinking about when we kind of get those mock results at the end of this year, thinking about what subjects we've done particularly well in. But generally half the battle of doing well at university is enjoying it. So picking subjects that you're genuinely interested in and passionate about, that can also help when it comes to applying to university. We want to see students who are passionate and interested. Not just choosing subjects they think are going to earn them lots of money, for example. Really picking those subjects that are going to highlight your skills and your knowledge is what we'd like to see. In a more practical sense, students do also need to consider the typical entry requirements for certain subjects. So for example, I've just been looking at this banner about applying for medical courses, for example. Things like medicine, dentistry, veterinary courses generally have traditionally quite high entry requirements, and they might also have high GCSE requirements as well. So students making sure that they are choosing courses that are kind of within the realm of their predicted grades, what they are likely to receive at the end of their level 3 qualification, so their A-levels, BTECs, whatever they're studying at the moment. In terms of research, there are so many different websites you can kind of look at and choose from. We generally kind of say the UCAS website is always the best place to start with your research. They are very much the keepers of all university information. But also another one that we do really like to recommend is this, discoveruni.gov.uk. It's nice and impartial because it is .gov.uk. It's a great one for comparing universities. So for those of you maybe who are still at that, you're trying to narrow down 15 universities to 5 universities. Discover Uni is quite good for comparing unis on some quite unique statistics. So if you wanted to compare universities based on their student satisfaction rates or their graduate employability rates, you can do that on Discover Uni, which is quite handy. So we've mentioned UCAS a few times already. The main reason a lot of you may have heard of UCAS before, if you haven't already, is through that term UCAS points. You might have heard of the UCAS tariff, and I've got some examples of it up here on the right-hand side for you. So the UCAS tariff system is a system created by UCAS that adds a numerical value to all qualifications that students do, kind of from year 11 onwards. And that can be academic qualifications, but also extracurricular qualifications and certificates and awards as well. So it could be things like an extended project qualification, grades in musical instrument, the Duke of Edinburgh Award. There are lots of kind of extracurricular activities that students may have completed or might be considering completing that could also have UCAS points attached to them. So you can see here, for example, we're looking at A-levels and BTECs, so we're looking at kind of these different numerical values based on the grades that students receive. And sometimes when you look at universities' entry requirements, instead of them just saying we need you to get 3 C's in your A-levels, they might instead give you a numerical value, which is what's called their UCAS tariff. The benefit of obviously universities asking you for your UCAS tariff instead of just your grades is that you can make up UCAS points from more than just A-levels, BTECs, T-levels, for example. So that can be really, really helpful. There is a calculator on the UCAS website, so if you're sitting there kind of thinking, oh, I did that thing last summer, and oh, I'm considering doing that this summer, I've done these grades, I've got this certificate, I've done this sports award, etc. Go and have a look at the UCAS website. You can pop in the title of the qualification, and it will tell you roughly how many UCAS points you are eligible for. So I really, really recommend that. So once we've chosen a course, we then need to choose a university. So how are we going to do that? So there are kind of a few different things that we suggest that students consider kind of hand in hand, hopefully all together, to decide whether a university is right for them. Obviously, first things first, it's going to be the course. We need to make sure that the university offers that course and that the course is right for the student. Especially if we're looking at those subjects that are kind of a bit of a broader subject area. So it might be if you're looking at something like history, you might have a super specific interest in ancient history. So you need to make sure that, yes, that university offers history, but they specifically do ancient history as part of their course. So that's what we mean, kind of make sure the course is right. We also obviously need to consider location. So for some students, generally the first decision is going to be, are we staying at home or are we moving away for university? Now obviously we're quite lucky here in the Midlands, you've got a few universities that are commutable. I'd love to think you all come to Northampton, but I know that's not realistic. But we do have a few universities that are commutable from here in Northampton. And for some of you, moving an hour away to somewhere like Birmingham might be too far. For some of you, it might not be far enough. You might be thinking, oh my God, no, get me to the other end of the country, stat. And that's okay. Try not to go too much on what kind of friends are doing, classmates, what siblings have done before you. Try to focus on what's going to give you the best university experience. Some of you might have super specific locations in mind, so you might think, oh, I want to go and live in Manchester, I want to go and live in London. And obviously the benefit of that is that there are lots of universities for you to choose from in those particular places, so you could use all of your university choices just in one specific location. Generally, as long as the course is right for you at a university, you can be as picky as you like. When I applied to university, I only applied to universities that were by the sea. So you can be really picky as long as the course is right for you. We do also want to think about the local environment, so things like part-time job opportunities in that particular town or city. Thinking about, do you want to live in a town, do you want to live in a city, do you want to be at a campus university or a city university, because there is a difference between the two. And thinking about things like extracurricular activities that you love and enjoy, making sure you can continue those when you go to university as well. Generally, once students have chosen a university, obviously the next decision then is choosing where they want to live when they go to university. So again, there's some considerations there. We would generally say that hands down the best way to find out more about universities is come along to open days. They are the best way to find out more. They are held all throughout the year, including in the holidays. So we've got a couple of the summer holidays this year, and so will other universities. They are generally always at the weekends, and they are always free to attend. You can have a really good in-depth look at the campus, including the accommodation, meet people that are going to be teaching on the course, meet current students, which I always think is the best opportunity to make the most of our open days. Lots more in-depth information about the course, but also things like application support. So my job at Open Days at Northampton is just helping people write their personal statements. That's my job. We also have things like financial support as well. You can chat with all the different support teams at the uni. We hold sessions specifically for parents and carers at Northampton. Hopefully other universities do as well. And then if you are going to open days sort of elsewhere, maybe in towns and cities that you've never visited before, really making sure that you are exploring that local area, kind of not just, getting out the car or getting off the train, walk around the university for a couple of hours, head straight home again. Even if it's just you have a coffee, you go for lunch, just making sure that yes, the university is right for you, but is the town or city right for you as well? We kind of need to make sure we're looking at both in equal measure. So in terms of the UCAS application itself, for students applying to university to start next September 2025, get my years mixed up there, applications are now technically open. In that, you can't submit an application, but the UCAS system has opened for 2025 entry. So students can log on, create their account, start filling in the application, start their personal statement if they wanted to. So there is kind of that opportunity is available. If you just wanted to start having a little look, log on, register, you get what's called your UCAS hub, and you can set that up and get cracking if you did want to. Everything that happens on your UCAS application comes through what's called your UCAS hub. Students, if you would like a parent or carer or somebody in your life to have access to your UCAS application in the kind of from a data protection point of view, they can talk to UCAS on your behalf, they can talk to universities on your behalf, you can set up what's called nominated access. So parents and carers, if you would like to do that, please ask students to remember to do that when they do start on UCAS. To make sure that your application is linked up to school, so it comes back here to NSG, you'll be given a buzzword from school that school will provide. Please make sure you're submitting that letter for letter, number for number correctly, so it comes back to the correct school. Thankfully, there's no other Northampton school for girls in the country, but we do sometimes go with schools that have got quite similar names, so just be careful there. Now, when students apply for UCAS, they get 5 choices. They're allowed to apply to 5 universities. Generally, most students are applying to 5 different universities, but for the same course, or at least very, very similar courses. And that's mainly to do with the personal statement. Generally, we're saying to students, because there's a payment attached to making a UCAS application, which you can see here, that kind of unlocks all of those 5 choices. So we tend to say to students, please make sure you use all 5 of those choices. Give yourself the best possible chance, the highest probability of getting into university, and use all 5 of those university choices. When you initially make an application on UCAS, we as universities cannot see where else you have applied. And when you make your initial application, you're not putting them in any sort of preference order. They literally just appear in your application in alphabetical order when you start. A couple of other bits to kind of consider. So for those of you who want to make a start on your UCAS application, this is what else you're going to need. So things like your education history, your employment history, a reference, which is the only part of the application that's not completed by you guys, that's completed here at school by your tutors, and then the personal statement, which we've already talked about a couple of times. The personal statement is the part of the application that's going to take the most time. It's kind of a covering letter for the UCAS application. Students will get loads of support here at school for writing it. They will have sessions from universities and they'll get lots of support to help them kind of with that writing. We tend to say that it's best to start having a go at writing it before you head off for the summer holidays, so then when you come back in September you're like good to go, ready to start on that personal statement. So where are we at the moment in terms of the university application process? So as I said, from the 14th of May, so from last week, you can register and start your application. Applications can then be submitted from the beginning of September. University is technically based on a first come, first served basis. So if students want to submit their applications early, we are allowed to make them an offer if we wanted to. So if you did really want to crack on and get it done over the summer, you could if you wanted to. The first deadline for university applications is the 15th of October. That is only for students who are applying to Oxford and Cambridge and students applying for medicine, veterinary and dentistry courses. So if you are in that first deadline that you need to be done by the 15th of October, you really need to be one of those students that is starting your application now and getting that personal statement kind of at least halfway done before you go off for the summer holidays. Because when you come back in September, that deadline is going to roll around real quick. It's before even October half term, so please make sure you are sticking to that. The deadline for most other university courses then is the 29th of January. Well, it was this year, it was the 29th of January. It flips between the 29th and the 31st, but generally it's the end of January. But school will have their own internal deadline. Miss was telling me earlier, when do you usually like them in by?
So we have an internal deadline of the 1st of December usually, and have them all off by Christmas.
There you go. So 1st of December is actually, aim to. 1st of December is when school would like you to have your application done. So even though we know that you know that's the deadline, 29th of January, but if you think if everybody in the sixth form at NSG clicks submit on the 28th of January, there's no way school are going to be able to check everyone's applications, proofread your personal statements, submit a reference for you and get them off in time for that deadline on the 29th of January. So please make sure when school give you that internal deadline that you are sticking to it. So, that's the application bit. I'm now going to ever so quick whiz through a bit of information about student finance. So I'm sure you all know by now there is a cost attached to attending university for home and international students. The information I'm providing in a minute is for home students that I'm going to provide this evening. And also bear in mind that this is information based on students starting this September, so September 2024. Numbers do change slightly every year, so just something to be aware of for this time next year when students are making their applications. So that main application deadline was last week, so not this time next year, earlier than this time next year. So, there is a cost attached to attending university. Students pay £9,250 a year for their tuition fees. And students can apply for 2 loans from the government, so from Student Finance England. That is the tuition fee loan and the maintenance loan, which I'm going to go into a lot more detail about in a few moments. That's for home and for settled EU students. If there are any EU or international students in the room, please feel free to come and have a chat at the end and we can kind of figure out what sort of stage of funding you're at. If not, there's loads of information online on the Student Finance website as well. Now, depending on your circumstances, there's also lots of extra support available, whether that's from the government and from universities themselves. That's in the form of non-repayable grants like bursaries, scholarships, awards, etc., that don't have to be paid back. A bit of myth busting, I guess, right out the gate, but taking out a student loan, because it's got that word loan, that word debt attached to it, people sometimes worry about kind of the implications of that. And I will go into lots more detail about the repayment system in a few moments. But taking out a student loan does not affect a student's credit rating. It also doesn't affect the parent or carer's credit rating because they're providing household income information about their salaries, taxes, etc. And that is mainly to do with the repayment system, which I'll come on to in a second. So, we talked about tuition fees. So, the way the tuition fee loan works is that tuition fees aren't payable up front, so it's not that students can't go to their first loan until they kind of turn up with a cheque or a wad of cash. The idea is that students will apply to student finance for a tuition fee loan. They will be accepted. Everybody who applies for their tuition fee loan gets paid their tuition fees in full for the duration of their studies. Generally, student finance provide funding for your course plus an extra year. So if you needed an extra year of funding for whatever reason, you might do a foundation course, you might do a resit, etc. So generally, they're providing it so for most people, that's 4 years of funding. And when the loan is accepted and students are awarded their tuition fee loan, the students don't actually physically see their tuition fees. The tuition fees are sent straight off to the university on the student's behalf. So it's relatively straightforward. Everyone who applies gets their fees paid in full. This one is not based on household income. Everyone's getting their fees paid, and it's paid directly to the university. So that's kind of pretty straightforward, I said. The maintenance loan, if you've heard about student loan finance being a little bit complicated, a little bit confusing, that has probably come from the maintenance loan. So the maintenance loan is the loan that kind of does what it says on the tin. It's there to maintain students. It's there to help with their living costs. So going towards things like rent, travel, food shopping, course costs, etc. And it's different from the tuition fee loan in a couple of key ways. So firstly, the maintenance loan is means tested. It's based on household income. So that's salaries of parents, carers, whoever students live with and are financially dependent upon. And generally, if the household income goes up, the maintenance loan amount goes down, and vice versa. There is a calculator on the Student Finance website where students can go and pop in their household income, where they're going to live at university, and it will give them a rough estimate on how much they could expect to receive. Just again, bear in mind that this is based on 2024 entry, not 2025 entry. The other thing that can affect how much students receive their maintenance loan, you can see on the right-hand side up here, is where students choose to live when they go to university. So you can see it split into these 3 categories. So you've got students living at home, students living away from home outside of London, students living away from home studying in London. And you can see it kind of goes up in those increments there. That number on the right-hand side is the maximum amount that students could receive. That's for household incomes of £25,000 a year and below. And that number is divided by 3. So they'll kind of, for example, 8,610 is divided by 3, and students only get their maintenance loan 3 times throughout the year. So year 12, this is why we all harp on so much about managing your money and budgeting at university, because the maintenance loan only comes to you once every 3 or 4 months. So you get it in September, January, and April. So this is why it's really important about learning how to manage your money when you go to university. Now, student finance is obviously reapplicable to students who have to apply for it each year of their university study, but they do try and make it as straightforward as possible. They just tick a box to say, yes, I'm going back to university, please can I have my tuition fees again? And if the maintenance loan needs to be adjusted so the household income has changed for whatever reason, students can provide proof of that as well. So just a bit more of a breakdown there for you about the maintenance loan. So you can see that lower threshold then is £25,000 a year, and below that's the maximum amount, and then it goes up to between £65,000 and £75,000 a year. If the household income is such that students would only be eligible for that minimum amount you can see there, students can apply for what's called the non-means tested route. So if you know that young people would only be eligible for the minimum amount anyway, you can apply for student finance without having to provide the household income information and just accept that you would get the minimum amount of maintenance loan. You can see obviously it's a little bit higher for London there as well. As I said, there's a calculator on the student finance website. If you'd like something a bit more specific, I'd recommend going there to have a look. So, when do we pay back the student loan? So students are on, starting university at the moment, on what's called Plan 5. We haven't received much indication that's going to change, so it'll probably be the same for you guys as well, what's called Plan 5. Repayments are set at 9% on anything above £25,000 a year. So you don't start paying back a student loan until you're earning over 25k a year. And it's only 9% on anything that's over it. So for example, if you were earning dead on £25,000 a year, not paying back any of the student loan, anything above that then, so 30,000 for example, you're only paying back 9% on that £5,000 that is above the threshold. So it's about £38 a month it works out at the moment. It will be different by the time you guys finish university, potentially. If your earnings ever fall below £25,000 a year, for literally whatever reason, so students might choose to leave a job, they might be made redundant, leave to start a family, go travelling, start a business, whatever, their repayments are automatically suspended. So everything goes through like their national insurance, essentially. And that's kind of why a lot of people these days refer to it as a graduate tax, because the repayments work more like a tax than it does any other traditional loan. In that if you had a credit card loan, for example, they don't care how much money you're paying back, you have to continue paying it back regardless, whereas obviously this is based on how much money students or graduates are earning. Students have 40 years to pay back their student loan, and if they haven't paid back any of it or only some of it, by the time that 40 years is up, any outstanding balance is cleared from the student loan. So they have 40 years to give it a go, and if not, it is wiped out. So the government also, alongside money that students can borrow, they also have a bunch of what we call additional allowances. So these cover things like parents' learning allowance, if students have their own children. We also have the adult dependence grant, so students are carers for any adult members of their families. And we have with DSA, the Disabled Students Allowance. This covers all physical and mental disabilities, so it also covers things like dyslexia, anxiety and depression are included, autism are also included as part of the DSA. So if you think you might be eligible for it, please do have a look. You can apply for this alongside the student finance application. Another pot of money that the government has, I've named all these pots of money, they also have what's called the NHS Learning Support Fund. This is for students studying what we call allied health professions. So for us at Northampton, that's things like nursing, midwifery, paramedic science, podiatry, occupational therapy. There are 14 allied health professions in total. You can Google them on the NHS website. Students studying those courses get an extra £5,000 a year for their courses, and that is non-repayable. Students don't have to pay that back. There was also an extra bit of money, £3,000 extra for things like students with disabilities, students with their own children. There are different categories as well for that extra bit of funding. And again, non-repayable, so do have a look into it if you think you'd be eligible for the NHS Learning Support Fund. So how do we apply for student finance? I'm not going to go into tons of detail because you've got a while yet, don't we? We've got till kind of, applications usually open about February, March time. I think they opened kind of mid-March this year. Annoyingly, they never give a specific opening date. But applications are all made online, which is nice and straightforward. Students can again log on, create an account, and save sections as they go. Parents and carers, if you would like to provide your household income information yourselves, so kind of not having to pass it through students and kind of strange financial Chinese whispers, you can do it all yourselves. Students can nominate you as what's called a sponsor for their application. and you will be emailed a link to join just that part of their application within 24 hours of them submitting. So if you'd like to do it yourselves, that's not a problem. Assessments generally in student finance can take up to 8 weeks. So whilst there isn't a formal deadline for applying for student finance, everyone who applies for their funding gets their funding. But student finance say that if you apply, it's usually a date around the end of May, so it was the 17th of May this year. They guarantee that students will absolutely get their funding in time for the kind of the beginning of September. Students can continue to apply after that, it's just that they can't guarantee for your place, you'll get your funding in time for the start of your course. The main thing to note really is that students don't need a confirmed place at the university in order to apply for student finance. So when you kind of get to the springs, kind of again February, March time next year, students may still be waiting to hear back from some universities, but don't worry, you can still apply for student finance. We would just say apply with the details of whatever their first choice university is at that stage, and they can change it later on if necessary. Alongside everything that comes from the government, every individual university will also have their own set of bursaries and scholarships, which again are non-repayable. So when it comes to going to open days and having those conversations and researching universities, do just look into what support is available. Some of them will be based on subject-specific factors, some of them will be based on things like, again, disabilities. It could be that you're from a care background, you yourself are a carer, you could come from a low-income household, it could just be based on where you're from. So do have a look into them, provide the information to universities if you think it means you might be eligible for some extra funding. Another bit of research that we tend to recommend when you're looking at universities is thinking about what is also included in the tuition fees. So it's not anything the students have to apply extra for, there's not an application process, this is just things that universities have that students get, and they can be really, really financially helpful. So for example, in Northampton, all new students get a free laptop, including their tuition fees. They get things like Microsoft Office for free to use on their personal devices. Our lecturers aren't allowed to assign compulsory reading unless it's available for free in our library. If they have to go on a trip that's compulsory for their subject, or their travel and accommodation is paid for, all of our sports clubs are free to join. And these are kind of just things that are included for any student, no matter what course they're studying. These are all the perks that we offer. And universities will offer similar packages. I'd love to say none of them is Northampton, but obviously they will all offer packages in terms of financial support. So again, really worth asking those questions, looking into those sorts of things when you start going to open days. So parents, carers, what can you do now at this stage to start helping your young people with their university process? So obviously, like we say, attending open days, encouraging students to kind of get organised in the summer, see what universities they can visit, if they need to go particularly far away, kind of making sure those trips are organised where possible. If it is a university that's particularly far away, remember lots of universities do still offer virtual events as well, and online webinars and 360 tours on their websites, if it is particularly far away and you can't quite get there. Try to avoid putting certain pressure on students and young people to kind of pursuing kind of certain career paths or different qualifications, making sure that they're aware of all of their options. Obviously evenings like tonight are great because you're learning about all the different options, and just kind of making sure that students are aware of what they can do when they leave sixth form. Also helping young people with their application, so when it comes to that personal statement, for example, the proofreading, helping them to remember some of their achievements, highlighting those excellent qualities that you think universities would like to know about. Sometimes we have a tendency, especially as Brits, to be a bit shy, a bit humble. We really want students to show off in their personal statements, so please make sure you're encouraging your young people to do them as well. When it comes to the finance side of things, obviously making sure that we are sending that housing information nice and prompt to student finance. We don't want it to be that the students applied in time and that you push them over the deadlines, making sure we're sticking to all those deadlines too. So I just leave you with this, kind of thinking about why are we going to university? Why should young people be thinking about higher education? And I just kind of like to leave you on some of these little stats about kind of the value of university, I guess. So, for example, you can see here that by 2035, there are going to be around 2.2 million jobs created that are going to require students who have been to university. So looking at kind of those degree qualifications. You know, once students have got a degree, it's not going anywhere. So it's really, really helpful kind of thinking about why we should be considering HE. Thinking about the money side of things, university graduates earn on average about £11,500 more a year than people who don't go to university, and that's regardless of subject. That's for all university graduates across the board. Obviously some of them will be higher than that as well. And then in 2022, 87% of university graduates got jobs, and the median salary is rising all the time. When I first started this job, it was only about £22,000 a year, but it's got up to nearly £40,000 a year. So there's fantastic earning potential for university graduates as well. So that is it from me. If anyone has any questions, like I said, there's that QR code you can scan. I've also got some leaflets and stuff that I'll leave out at the end. It's got the same QR code on it as well. And I will hang out if anyone has any questions at the end, because I'm wary that these carry on with other speakers, so I'll hang out if you've got any other questions. So thank you very much, and I will hand back over to Nick. Cheers, thank you.